Hello, nutrition people. How are you? All right. So what I'm doing here is a second video. As promised, I wanted to talk about nutrition in pregnancy. We had another video that I created earlier this week on, nutrition throughout the adult life and what happens as we age. But pregnancy is very special, pregnancy and lactation. So I wanted to go over this. Even though I know you already have this material, I wanted to just review it myself as well with you guys. So let me move my little icon. Here we go. So the bottom line is this: the mother's food habits and nutritional status before pregnancy, during pregnancy, and after pregnancy is going to influence the offspring in terms of, successful growth patterns and nurturing new life in a healthy manner. So pregnancy is super important. And if you plan on getting pregnant, it is super important also to make sure that you do some pre-pregnancy nutritional priming, so to speak. So why? Because there could be all kinds of things with vitamin deficiency. You can actually create birth defects and stunt growth and development of the fetus. So pregnancy is a prime example of physiological synergism, a synergy between the mother, the placenta as the feeding ground, literally nurturing the fetus and sustaining life through the mother's blood. The bloodstream, is bottom line, the connecting source for all the food intake that the mother takes in, and all digested material is going to be absorbed into the bloodstream and eventually reaches the placenta. So through the food that a pregnant woman eats, she will provide the nourishment that is required to begin and support life, and also to continue and support life after pregnancy. You have to develop that foundational buildup, making sure that you have proper calcium levels so that you have normal growth and development of the fetus. So the energy needs are way more than the non-pregnant woman. So your energy needs will increase, the metabolic output, the workload will increase, since now the mother and the fetus will share the same metabolism for a little while. So we need extra protein, we need extra calories. And so the first trimester is really not something that you notice that much, but second and third trimester, for example, second trimester, this is the number, 340 kilocalories per day is what's needed. And then third trimester, the energy increases even more, where you need even more calories, and it's about 452 kilocalories per day. So the carbohydrates and fats and proteins, what do we need? So let's go over it. What are the nutritional demands for a pregnant woman? So the carbohydrate needs are about 45 to 65% of the total kilocalories. So the minimum daily requirement increases from a mere 130 grams, okay, per day to 175 grams per day. Doesn't seem like a lot. The fat needs also increases by 20 to 35% of the total daily kilocalories. Why? Because brain development is going to need fat, tissue development. So fetal growth and development is going to demand more fatty tissue. All right. So the recommendations aren't specific, and they do vary between organizations. So just be aware of that. So pregnant woman just needs to increase their fat intake. Of course, you want them to eat healthy fats and not the fats that are going to create high cholesterol. So the avocado, the fish, that kind of thing. All right, now nutritional demands during pregnancy in terms of proteins. Let's go over that. So we went over fat. What about proteins? So with proteins, You have the need for more protein synthesis. You have tissue development, growth of maternal tissue, development of the placenta. These all require lots of protein. The blood volume is increased, the maternal blood volume, therefore also the albumin and all these other proteins that are found in the blood. Okay, growth of the fetus demands way more protein. So the minimum daily requirement increases from 46 grams per day to 71 grams per day. So how do you get the appropriate protein intake? You need eggs, you need milk, you need beef, you need poultry, fish, pork, cheese, soy products, and other animal products. Incomplete proteins are legumes and grains. So this is the decision whether, someone who's pregnant, whether they're going to stay vegan or vegetarian, or from vegan go to vegetarian at least, or from vegetarian temporarily eat meat or things like that. Especially someone who has iron deficiency to begin with, and then on top of that, they're getting pregnant. They're going to need to really think hard and maybe at least be a pescatarian. But they need some source of actual protein, meat protein, and probably fish would be the best idea. If someone is a vegetarian, they can go to pescatarian. All right, which interesting, nobody wrote on that. Nobody did a presentation on that, pescatarianism, because I think that's the perfect middle ground. Anyway, so let's go on to other demands of pregnancy. The minerals, calcium, iron, the vitamins like folate and vitamin D, these are all requirements and are really absolutely important, especially vitamin D for bone density and development. Folate, if you don't have enough folate in the system, you could have nervous system disorders, malformations, spina bifida, things of that sort. All right, now what about the weight gain? So yes, there is some weight gain, and you should have some weight gain during pregnancy. The set weight goals according to the mother's pre-pregnancy weight and nutritional status, as well as the BMI, body mass index. So you really need to know that information before. So hopefully, like if you go to your GYN, OBGYN, make sure you know what your pre-pregnancy weight is so that they can gauge it. And that they can gauge it based on the weight gain per trimester. So first trimester, you're supposed to be gaining on average about 2 to 4 pounds. Thereafter, with a pre-pregnancy BMI between 18.5 and 24.9 kilograms per meter square, which is generally about 14 ounces per week during the remainder of the pregnancy. So that doesn't always happen. And with multiple pregnancies, I can assure you that you'll gain the weight faster, and it's just, it varies with each woman. All right, so I'm going to skip the case studies because I'm just lecturing. I don't really want to do that. Case studies are for when we are interacting with each other. So let's do the daily food plan for someone. So the daily food plan for someone who's pregnant. So you want to make sure it's an individualized plan based on their religious background, their cultural background, what their belief system is. Perhaps they don't want animals to be slaughtered, so they're strict vegetarians. Maybe you can switch them over to at least eating eggs. Kind of doing that, like the vegans switch them to actually eating eggs and dairy temporarily. And then increasing the proteins, or at least supplementation with proteins if they insist on continuing the vegan life or vegetarian life. Now, alternative food patterns do occur based on the issues with nausea, the issues with, the inability to tolerate certain foods when you're pregnant. So that's also an issue. Now, you want to eat a sufficient quantity of high quality. All right, so you want high quality food and very nutrient dense food. You don't want processed foods. And you want to eat regular meals, as well as making sure that there's no fasting and no skipping meals, and definitely snacking. So it's a whole different ball game when it comes to being pregnant. As for exercise, it should be moderate intensity. You can do some aerobic activity, about 150 minutes, 30 minutes of moderate intensity at most. All right. But you would want to make sure that you don't increase the cortisol levels. So you really want to keep that exercise at a moderate level and not go to high intensity. Of course, you want to always check with your physician because that's a huge thing. All right, now let's go on to issues with your tissues. So unfortunately, the elevated HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin hormone, HCG, is going to be elevated as someone is advancing in pregnancy, especially in the first trimester. It shoots up and it causes nausea, it causes vomiting. There's also other issues with constipation. Hemorrhoids is usually probably by third trimester. Heartburn, definitely. I know I had it by third trimester. The baby's kicking, legs are probably pushing up into the diaphragm, and things are getting pushed up into the esophagus. Now, high-risk pregnancies. What are the high-risk pregnancies? I would say anyone who is obese, increased age and parity, so, how many children, alcohol abuse, nicotine, drugs, caffeine, too much coffee, pica, which is the compulsion to eat non-food products, so dirt or pieces of a couch. I mean, it's crazy, but it is a mental disorder, and it's a compulsion, so to speak. And then, of course, socioeconomic difficulties puts women at risk with their pregnancy, of course, because they're not getting the proper nutrition. Now, what happens with alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and poor nutritional status? The baby will have developed poorly. And in childhood, you'll see a small head circumference. You'll see a wider, flattened nasal bridge. The microphthalmia, so like the lid is not fully developed. Low set ears. A small midface. Indistinct groove above the upper lip. Thin upper lip, and a small jaw. So these are all situations that are due to nutritional status. Very interesting. All right, now other concerns during pregnancy is anemia, intrauterine growth restrictions. So unfortunately, with petite women, this could be a problem. Hypertensive disorders. Women can develop high blood pressure, even if it's temporary, but they will develop high blood pressure during the pregnancy. Gestational diabetes, if one gets this diagnosis in pregnancy, they have a higher risk of becoming diabetic later on in life. Pre-existing disease, of course, is always an issue when it comes to pregnancy complications. All right, so moving on, I want to talk about, I'm not going to do the case study. I want to talk about nutrition during breastfeeding. So during breastfeeding, this is very helpful to do the breastfeeding so that the IgG, immunoglobulin G, antibody is going to be transferred from the mother to the baby, but it's only good for the first 2 months. After that, it won't matter. Now, the diet that the mother is really focusing on is really going to actually help the child, the baby. So you want to make sure you have a proper nutritional status with the best, foods like fruits and vegetables and grains, all in balance, as colorful as possible. Lean meats if you eat meat, and dairy products if you tolerate them. There's alternative dairy products if you can't tolerate milk. There's hemp milk, coconut milk, almond milk, all right? But definitely the baby needs calcium, so you need to make sure you get some dairy. All right, so basically you can read through all this, that there's an increase in the proportion of infants who are breastfed at least 1 year to 34%, so this is good news. This was the percentage from 2020. There's an increase in the proportion of employers that have worksite lactation support programs. I wish I would have had that. My first baby was in 1999, 2002, and 2003. And in 1999, I can assure you, I was breastfeeding in the bathroom. Then there was nothing. There wasn't even like anywhere to sit or anything. I was literally in front of a toilet breastfeeding. So this is good news. So we are doing a lot to improve the status for working moms and lactating mothers, because face it, most moms now have to work, and most moms want to lactate and help their child. All right, so let's move on. The physiological process of lactation is that the mammary glands and the hormones are what's going to kick in. So prolactin is going to be kicking in from the anterior pituitary, but the hypothalamus is going to dictate the anterior pituitary what to do, because it releases prolactin releasing hormone, and then prolactin is released from the anterior pituitary, which then goes to the breasts via the bloodstream and then stimulates the milk production, as long as the baby is going to suckle on the nipple. This process continues. Now, the initial letdown of milk is oxytocin, which is also involved in labor and delivery and allowing dilation. But that's only the initial letdown of milk, and oxytocin is positive feedback, and it's found in the posterior pituitary, not the anterior pituitary. So that's all about the mammary glands and the hormones. It's based on supply and demand. So it's negative feedback. If the baby is no longer feeding, then prolactin will no longer be released, or the production will go down. The barriers to breastfeeding is obviously accessibility, the physiological complications, perhaps like there's an inability to be able to breastfeed for the shape of the nipple, and maybe the baby is not latching. There's different complications with that. That's where you get a lactation nurse for that. Nutrition is super important during lactation, getting the proper diet, getting enough fluid, getting enough energy, and of course the lifestyle of the individual. This is the anatomy of the breast, so you can recall this. And here's the nipple pore, and this is the lactiferous sinus and the ductules. And so all the milk is going to be released via this nipple pore. All right, so as long as the baby is going to latch on, the anterior pituitary is going to release prolactin, okay? But the hypothalamus tells the anterior pituitary to release prolactin. How does it do that? PRH, prolactin releasing hormone. Now, the posterior pituitary, as I said, is the initial milk letdown during labor and delivery. And so the oxytocin is going to cause milk ejection. All right. So the long-term impacts of feeding, the risks of using breast milk substitutes is that it is still not the best thing as the real thing, because you know, human milk has the antibodies from the mother, and that's why it's recommended. All right, so I do hope you enjoyed this lecture, and I'll see you for the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.